What is up, guys? Welcome back to episode number 9 right here on the Hockey Edmonton Show. I'm YouTube Trev, and joining me, as always, Jeremy Hallischuk. Jeremy, how you doing today, man?
Well, I am doing well. I'm feeling still a little bit festive here, and it's good that we can drag this out a couple extra days for people that are tuning in live on YouTube.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, today is Halloween, as you can see. Unfortunately, I had this huge plan today that I actually ended up not telling anyone at work. Besides you, you're the only one that knows, so keep that a secret. But I had this huge plan. I wasn't going to dress up as anyone, but I was going to bring someone in, and it would have been awesome. But I have the Hockey Edmonton Show, obviously, every Thursday here, so or every Saturday. My apologies. And I just feel like it would have been a little weird for what my plan was. So I ended up just disregarding that. There's always next year. But are you doing anything for Halloween this year?
Not really, no. I think just handing out the candy.
Here's some candy, kids. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Right on. Well, nothing wrong with that. It's been a very busy week here at Edmonton Sports Talk. And if you're tuning in right now, be sure to leave a like, drop a comment down below, as always. And thank you for all the continued support. Episode number 9 weeks in. We're having a lot of fun with this. It's been good. And Jeremy, you're absolutely crushing it.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, no, it's been very good for us. I think a lot of good engagement, and again, getting the information out to people about the game, about different aspects of the game, what we're doing in the game. So I love this program, and yeah, it's definitely a benefit for us at Hockey Edmonton.
For sure. Yeah, no, by all accounts, it's been really good. And today we're going to be talking about managing conflict and concerns. This is a big one. There's a lot to discuss with this topic. I feel like everyone, in sports can, feel, it's just very relatable, right? Everyone goes through this. So I'm happy we're addressing this today. And pretty shortly here, we will be speaking with Carlia Schwab, manager of EDI and Safe Sports. So she's got some very good insight, how to it'll be awesome. We got a lot of questions for her, so it's going to be a good show. And without out of the way, let's just start with a quick little preamble before we bring on Carlia. Just what can the viewers expect today?
Yeah, I mean, from our standpoint, for the vast majority of our participants, their experience is definitely a positive one. That's what we keep on hearing, and that's been what our participants say. But unfortunately, there are times where conflicts do occur, and we touched a little bit on this earlier on when Dusty was hosting the show. I think it was episode 2 there, about expectations and how to manage those expectations, and also how to be a supportive parent. We talked about that a little bit a few weeks ago as well, that idea of managing those concerns. But again, we want to bring in an expert here to discuss those, how to manage those, and again, how to navigate if there are specific concerns that are brought forth. Again, we touched on those earlier in episodes, but again, we're bringing on one of the experts at Hockey Alberta. And again, this is something that is a passion of mine as well. I think this is where I started my sport administration side of it, was dealing with game and conduct back in the day. So these things that are outside of the playing rules. And so again, for me, it's a very passionate topic, and something that I definitely enjoyed during my time to try to really help our organizations navigate providing this great service to our participants. And again, what we talk about here is not necessarily the stuff that's inside of the playing rules. So, typically tripping, the penalties, tripping, fighting, cross-checking, all those things. No, we're talking about behavioral issues and challenges. And so again, what we really want to do is make sure that our participants understand very good the processes that are in place to help manage those concerns when they happen. And again, this isn't just a hockey thing. Over the last 5 years especially, we've seen the stories, be it gymnastics, be it skating, football, hockey, Canada, United States. All these issues are something that are happening across all sports. So again, we want to highlight how to manage these regardless of your sport. And while we are in a specific hockey program, and a lot of the processes that we will talk about are, related to hockey itself, I think some of the information that you will get in this program will be beneficial in any other sport that you might be watching. And again, from a Hockey Alberta standpoint, this is something that has been at the forefront for the organization for a long time. I started in 2012, and this was even before my time. There was a lot of great work with a lot of great volunteers um, in the game and conduct sphere, and it just continued to evolve. You know, we just kept on raising the bar, and now investing in a person with that expertise just continues to push this bar higher and higher for the organization and for the sport as a whole, and something that we as a sport are very proud of. And again, this is also topical because on November 4th here is National there's some recognition. It's 11.4 day, and we'll touch on that a little bit, but it coincides with the national playing rule from Hockey Canada. So again, we'll touch on that a little bit later on. But again, this is why we targeted this episode for this weekend, because it is a topical time for recognizing, managing these types of concerns and the work that's being done to do so.
Yeah, well said, Jeremy. And I think it's important you highlighted this isn't just hockey, it's all sports. But today, obviously, it's the Hockey Edmonton Show. So that's what we're going to be discussing today. And I believe our guest is ready. Are you ready to bring her on?
Yep, for sure. Definitely.
Awesome. Okay, let's quickly make sure. Carlia Schwab is joining us right now, manager of EDI and Safe Sports. Carlia, how are you doing today? Did I pronounce your name correctly?
You did. Yeah,
Okay,
I'm doing well. Can you both hear me all right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, we're all good. Awesome, Carlia. Well, thank you for taking the time out of your day. We really appreciate this. It's very nice to have you on. Maybe just start off by introducing yourself to the audience and, tell them your role, what you do, and how long you've been doing it.
Yeah. So Carlia Schwab, I'm the manager of Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Safe Sport with Hockey Alberta. I've been in the role just since January. So as I kind of heard you allude to, this is a new role and a new position within Hockey Alberta. So something I'm really excited to joining a really great team. And I'm excited to be here and see where we can go. So lots of things have happened since January, or getting my feet wet and my fingers in a lot of different things. And this is just one of those pieces that I'm happy to come on and chat a little bit more about.
For sure. Yeah. So you mentioned this is a new role, a new position. Is that because it's just, with the sports, it's constantly evolving. You guys are just trying to adapt and come with new ways to, problem solve and just, I guess, prevent, managing conflict and concerns?
I think so. I think, like you said, hockey is evolving, sports are evolving, the world's evolving, where we need to have some people in positions to advocate for equity, diversity, inclusion, maltreatment, bullying and harassment, conflict resolution and conflict management, and give some of that bit of expertise back into a sport specific space so that participants can feel safe accessing their sport. They can feel like they have some tools, and that their organizations, their overarching bodies are supporting them and looking after their future and in the world that we're in right now.
Right on. Just right out of the gate, I'm just curious, what are you guys doing? What are the new procedures to ensure participants are safe, as you had mentioned?
Oh, there's so many different things. What I think we're doing is we're trying to provide support, tools, resources to our associations, to individuals in leadership positions like Jeremy, so that they have the resources to support their participants on the front line. I don't work directly with players in all of our communities, so we really rely on associations, on the board members, the coaching, the staff, the teams, the volunteers, and the families to take some of the tools and resources that we're trying to provide and enact some change or put those forward in ways that are applicable to their participants, to their communities, to the unique needs of their communities and participants. And so I think that's what we're trying to do or looking to do, is provide those foundational tools and supports.
Perfect. So yeah, definitely. And again, the information that's been shared with us from organizationally, definitely of benefit and continue to be shared down the line in the Edmonton sphere, obviously, with our members and such. So let's start us off with the question: what is bullying, abuse, harassment, maltreatment? So, can you please just give a little bit of a brief description of, the differences, the nuances, and yeah, just a little bit of a description and what can, yeah, we'll start with that. Sorry.
Yeah, you bet. So I'll go through a couple bits of definitions for you, and I'm going to read those off of our Hockey Alberta website. There's many different definitions for things like bullying, harassment, maltreatment, and they all essentially say the same thing. It just depends on nuances in wording or how they're applied to a certain audience or organization. Schools, workplaces have lots of different definitions, but they're kind of saying the same thing. So in essence, if we start with bullying, it's a repeated, unwanted, aggressive behavior by one or more individuals towards another person. So it's targeted, meaningful behavior, harmful behavior that can be verbal, physical, social, or relational, or involving internet or technology. So something occurring over those spaces. And so that's one area where we might be looking to provide some support. So typically this could come across, or we might see bullying behavior happening between players and teammates, or between adults within the community. Um, Things like happening in the locker room, in some of those shared spaces. So that's how we might look at defining bullying, or how our website defines it. And you can find all of that information and a lot more on the website. If we look at harassment, it's a progression of bullying behavior. So it's similar behavior. It's offensive. It's verbal, social, physical. It can happen over technology, right? But it involves discrimination against a person because of their race, their nationality, their gender, their sex, their sexual orientation, their ethnicity, their age, their family status, their religion, a whole bunch of protected factors. And so when we're targeting somebody because of those things, and we're doing some of those same sorts of what we might describe as bullying behavior, we would have harassment. And then, and I believe you asked about maltreatment as well. And so if we look at maltreatment, now we're just getting into those larger terms of things like abuse. So it's physical, emotional, sexual violence or abuse, mistreatment, larger pieces of harm, more serious types of behavior, which can cause some sort of injury, physical, emotional injury or damage or harm, longer term types of impact. And that's what we would have maltreatment. And that could also be done through the technology. It doesn't just have to be in-person types of spaces as well.
Perfect. And yeah, so just to touch on that a little bit, I mean, most times in our sport, the maltreatment is the rarity, and the rest seems to be a little bit of a progression here. I think one of the challenges that people are juggling are how to how to define bullying itself as, this is targeted, continued, specific, versus sometimes kids being kids in that adolescent learning, and just they're being social and trying to just, yeah, interact with other people. So is there some things that we can think of when we're looking at, okay, is this, and for especially for our coaches, for our administrators, that balancing act of, okay, this is more serious, that defines more of a, when the term discipline, has a negative connotation, but at the end of the day, discipline, we want to change a behavior. That's the goal of discipline. So when I look at, okay, this is something that can be a simple warning conversation piece, versus you need to amp up the discipline to try and change a behavior. Are there a little bit of nuances there on how to identify and manage those minor things and prevent them from becoming something more severe? Or again, just bringing recognition that, yeah, this is bullying, this is the impact of your actions.
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. Bullying is not a conflict between friends. So normal disagreements, um, anger types of emotions where we're in the heat of the moment and we say something that's maybe a little bit harmful. Maybe we push somebody out of the way from like the water fountain. We block their access to maybe their seat or where their equipment is. Sort of normal conflict, heightened emotions, or arguments between people. That's not what bullying is. So people being people and managing through their emotions, especially children and teens, that's not a bullying behavior. That might be a cause for a conversation. Hey, we don't do that. We don't push people. We don't say hurtful things like that. So that could be a warning or a sign that we might have to have some further conversation or reestablish some values or ground rules within our spaces. It's not usually accidental or one-time incidences. Again, those can often be heightened emotions or a product of someone's environment, their situation that they might be in. It's also not friendly teasing or bantering back and forth. We might see that quite often where it sounds like it's a little bit harmful or we're saying some things that are maybe teasing and poking fun. But if it's bantery and going back and forth and nobody's indicating that they've reached a threshold of uncomfortable, then we wouldn't consider that something bullying or harmful. But again, those could be causes for let's realign back to our values or our behavior within our space. Where we see it turning into bullying is when it's repeated situations, where it's constantly targeting the same individuals over a course of time for the same actions. So we're always blocking their way to their bag or their equipment. We're always picking on one person or a small group of people and throwing their stuff into the hallway, not letting them go into the bathroom. We're constantly targeting those same individuals. And again, that could be physically. So with different acts like kicking or spitting or hitting or causing some harm to their property, or it could be in those verbal taunts, even if we might say, oh, it's just teasing, right? If it's constant, it's not going both ways, and we're seeing that somebody's visibly impacted by that behavior, then we might be looking at bullying, and where we might be wanting to focus a little bit more on, discipline, like you kind of hinted at, Jeremy, or some constructive conversation around, again, realigning to our values. Or maybe we need to have like a separate sit-down conversation, a mediated space conversation with parents about behavior that's happening and how we need to change that in order for an individual to continue with a team or to continue in a team event or a practice or what that looks like.
Carlia Schwab, manager of EDI and Safe Sport Hockey Alberta, joining us right now on the Hockey Edmonton Show. I'm just curious on what the whole process is like. Maybe you can just shed some light if a few of our viewers are, going through a situation. Who do they contact? And you hear it from time and time again. There are people that are just afraid to reach out and speak out. And I think it's important to shed some light on this. So just if you could briefly touch on what the whole process is like, who do they contact? Who does it go through? What do both parties get involved? Is it something that just one person handles? Kind of a little bit of a few questions there, but I'm just curious on the whole, if you could touch on that.
Yeah. So if we stick with some of that bullying and harassing behavior that we've been chatting about so far, the first step in any of those concerns, whether it be bullying, harassment, or even if it's just conflict in general between players, parents, somebody within the team space, is to bring that up to the team level to address. So coming to coaching staff, team managers, or other personnel who would be able to step in the moment and provide some actionable solutions. So taking it to that team level first. You might have to observe different rules that your teams and organizations have set in place, like the 24-hour rule, for example, or managing emotions and making sure we're bringing those forward in respectful ways. But starting at the team level, right? If it's a team issue, the team is the best space to interrupt and intervene and provide some discipline, consequences, or further conversations. If it's not able to be addressed at the team level, maybe it wasn't addressed to the way that we were hoping. The teams indicated they don't have the capacity to address it, or maybe it's above their level of understanding or knowledge, then you're going to go to your local associations level. So you're going to go to that little bit of a higher step process and looking at bringing that forward. And you want to make sure you exhaust all of your levels first before you move upwards. So having a team level conversation, going to our association, having those conversations. Maybe it's a more formal complaint. Associations have complaint processes, individuals that you can access on the board that you can send your complaints to. And then if it gets to spaces where there's some issues within that, Hockey Alberta can provide support in terms of making sure the association can handle those complaints. So we can support the association. I've done work in supporting Jeremy, for example, in dealing with complaints or managing different sort of conduct concerns that might come across my desk that need some added support or spaces. So that's a little bit of how you might progress through.
Perfect. So kind of a little bit of jumping a little bit back here to, the bullying, the abuse, the harassment, maltreatment, and such. What can we do to ensure our participants are safe, and how can we identify these suspected bullying, maltreatment, and abuse issues to go through that process that you outlined? So to initiate that process.
I think it's up to the adults to create spaces, and I shouldn't say I think, I know it's up to the adults to create spaces that are safe and supportive for our youth and our children to play hockey in safe and fun ways that they would like to. So adults need to be actively contributing to safe spaces. So they need to be aware of what that looks like. They need to create atmospheres where children and youth can listen and talk, share problems that are happening, share if there's bullying behavior or concerns that are happening between teammates. Adults need to become knowledgeable of what bullying looks like, what conflict looks like, so that they can spot it and intervene when it's happening. They need to teach children and youth how to effectively manage emotions, how to deal with conflict and bullying, how to work through disagreements, how to not like somebody, right? We don't always have to like everybody, but everyone deserves to be treated with respect and kindness. So how do we do those same things? And then they need to be able to advocate for the rights of the children and youth that they work with, that are part of their families and their teams. And they need to be able to be some of those voices to help bring those messages forward. So a lot of it's about learning and acknowledgement and creating that awareness.
Perfect. No, I love how you address that. Yeah, we don't have to like each other, but essentially we have to respect each other, and that is a team environment, and that goes beyond any sport. That is life as a whole. You might not like your coworkers, but you have to learn to respect them and such. And we'll touch on that a little bit of what parents can do on the advocacy piece a little bit later on in the show here and such. But what I would love to introduce here is something that is new in this sphere. And this is one of those direct results of, the quote unquote reckoning, TSN titled that, the reckoning at Hockey Canada, as well as all the other sports that have had issues over the last, it's come to light over the last five or so years, but a lot of sports have had issues dating back for decades. And that one of those outcomes was the independent third-party mechanism for reporting abuse and harassment, and essentially that maltreatment side of it. So again, the extremes. Again, all of us in sport, I think, are very proud that we don't see this very often, But again, it's good to know that there is even a further step now moving forward in this sphere to help address and manage some of the concerns that are brought forth and some of the, whether they have occurred or not in whatever sports, some of the stereotypes of things not getting dealt with in appropriate manner. So again, can you start us off with here a little bit of the introduction or a description of the independent third party process and what that process is designed to manage?
Yes, you bet. So the independent third party, sometimes you might hear them referred to as ITP or sport complaint group, is a fully independent group that was appointed to administer all of Hockey Canada's maltreatment complaints in a procedurally fair manner. So they look after or would review, administer complaint spaces for what we're calling serious maltreatment. So they're a space that any individual within a Hockey Canada program, so Hockey Alberta and our members, can access, can file a complaint or can report to when they suspect, have witnessed, again, or suspect that there is harm of a serious maltreatment nature. And so that is usually looking at those things we're thinking criminal language, we're thinking kind of scary things. So sexual maltreatment, so anything sexually involved, distribution or sharing of images online, so things that involve technology and shareable types of things, physical abuses and assaults. So really looking at serious forms of harm. Other forms of severe maltreatment or things that have caused serious impact, harm, violence, long-term impacts. Other forms of harm that might be reasonably known to be illegal or criminal or not okay within the system or the space of hockey. So that's where we might redirect, or we look to redirect and have people engage with the sport complaint group first. And sometimes it's bypassing those layers of systems that I had talked about earlier. If it matches those thresholds of serious, then we want to look at having the sport complaint group look after that first and foremost, so that they can help give some decision or direction on where that needs to go.
No, for sure. And I think, we are in a serious tone here because it is a serious subject, and we want to make sure that, again, all of us in the administrative role, our role is to ensure that our participants have a positive experience. And again, I think this just highlights the steps that sport is taking as a whole to continue to make sure that sphere is safe for our participants. And again, one of the things here is this body is completely independent of Hockey Canada, Hockey Alberta, Hockey Edmonton, all of our members. This is a completely separate body that, again, is responsible for managing or identifying those significant issues and managing them appropriately. And I think it's, again, staffed. Carlia definitely has the skills in this sphere, but it is staffed by those professionals who are aware and who are trained in and have that expertise in those areas that, again, us administrators may not have. And so when somebody does put in a concern to the independent third party, what can they expect in that process, and what are the potential outcomes that could happen from that process?
Yeah, so after receiving a complaint, the ITP and what they do is they analyze the complaint to determine the appropriate jurisdiction and the appropriate process. If ITP determines that the conduct, the incident, the allegation matches their threshold, so that serious maltreatment space, then they will assume some of that process over the complainant or over the allegation and the respondent and the complainant, and work with those individuals to move the process forward. And because that's a completely independent third-party space, anyone outside of hockey and those individuals directly involved in the complaint are not connected or not contacted about how that process goes. So I'm not actually in a great space to tell you how that process goes, because I at Hockey Alberta don't get to know that a complaint has been submitted, that ITP has accepted it and is moving forward through a process. So it remains independent between those individuals that are directly involved. But what I do know is that they move through that process in a really informative way so that everyone gets the opportunity to provide feedback, input to the allegation that's been brought forward.
Perfect. And then, so just touching on it again, if there are findings, what usually happens? And so this could be again determining if it's within their sphere, if it isn't, and then again, what happens if it's within their sphere? What can they rule on? I guess, for a lack of
Yeah.
better terms.
Yeah. So if they've accepted that jurisdiction and taken over that process, they will go through the whole review of the complaint, the allegation. If that becomes something that has been proven within their margins to have occurred, it's likely that the situation occurred. Then they have been given the authority, the power, the jurisdiction to issue some discipline or some sanctions to those individuals who are involved in that complaint. So that could look like impacting somebody's ability to play or to continue accessing the sport, whether that's a player or from a personnel standpoint. That could look like other sorts of outcomes like education and awareness, sanctions and decisions to create some change behavior so that things don't happen in the future. But what also could happen is they could not accept jurisdiction. They could determine that some of those complaints fall back under the jurisdiction or the power of the member association, so Hockey Alberta and our members. And then if that happens, we work with the association. Hockey Alberta would work with Hockey Edmonton, for example, or another association to manage and review that complaint, aligning to our processes and policies for conduct management, with the same sort of outcome of issuing some sort of final decision if it was founded, like suspensions, impacting play, or education and awareness outcomes.
Perfect. So once again, thank you very much for giving us that process, and again showing again how sport as a whole is continuing to push that bar to make sure that at the end of the day that our games, our activities are safe for participants and such. And I know you briefly did touch a little bit on what Hockey Alberta's role is and that stuff earlier on and before we address the third party side of it. So I think jumping ahead a little bit here, and I think again no different than when we had Stephen last week here. A lot of knowledge, a lot of great expertise. So we want to really highlight that expertise and that knowledge and those things that parents and administrators, coaches can take away. So, first question in terms of, we talked about some of the roles and responsibilities of managing, conflict and concerns. And overall, it's from what we heard earlier on, it's on everybody to manage this space for our participants, for our kids. And so, what are some of the expectations for parents and caregivers in addressing concerns as a whole and their role and responsibilities?
Yeah, I think and I keep saying I think, but in actuality, I know these are responsibilities. These are things we all need to be doing. But it's advocating for yourself, for your athletes, for your teams, and making sure you're continuing to bring complaints, concerns, and feedback forward every time that they happen. I know it sounds like that can be a lot of things, but addressing an incident of bullying, of harassment, or of concern every time it happens is more likely to create change than collecting all of those 10 or 20 incidents and then trying to blast them out to your association or to Hockey Alberta at the end of the season, when we really can't impact what happened at the start of the season or 20 games ago. So bringing things forward the first time. So that continuous advocacy is really important. And sometimes that looks like speaking to the individuals involved. So having a conversation with some parents of another athlete that maybe you're having some rough interactions with. Doing some of your own conflict management as parents and families and caregivers. Right? Again, bringing it to that team level first. Following things like the 24-hour rule, where we can manage our own emotions and feelings, and then come back and revisit the situation when we have a little bit of a clearer head and can come forward with some solutions-based approaches versus just pointing fingers at others.
Awesome. Carlia Schwab, manager of EDI and Safe Sport Hockey Alberta, joining us right now on the Hockey Edmonton Show. Thank you again for taking the time out of your day, Carlia. Just we touched on the parent side of things, so just kind of quickly want to dive into the coaching. What should a coach do if a concern is brought forward, and what can they do to help ensure it is managed properly as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. I know coaches are really busy doing a whole bunch of things for hockey, and now we're asking them to also look after behavior.
Yeah.
Right? We want you to manage a little bit of some behavior that's happening between your players, and that's simply because you're in a space where you're a safe adult. You have a group of young adults, children, teens, and youth who are under your care or your power of care for a set period of time where you have a really great space and opportunity to make some influence, create some change, and interrupt some behavior. So whether coaches want to or not, part of their game now is accessing resources and supports and providing some of that back to their players. So what that looks like is, just like we're telling parents, each and every time we have an incident that's conflicty, bullying or harassment, or causing some harm within our team atmosphere, we need to be addressing that. And that doesn't need to be like a super formal process. It might have to be, depending on the severity of the harm. But maybe that's just a bit of a check-in with the teammates. Maybe it's reestablishing some values and principles of your team, of your association, of Hockey Alberta, Hockey Canada, fair play rules and conversations. It could just be general setting the tone or the scene. Hey, we don't say those words here. That's not something that we talk about in the locker room. Do you realize how harmful that came across, or the impact that your language had on this person or this teammate? So sometimes it's respectfully calling the behavior and readdressing that as a group as to what our expectations are moving forward. So team meetings are a really great way to set the stage. This is what we expect. This is the behavior that we expect. And here's how we're going to address that behavior when it happens. So maybe that is conversations, separate meetings. Maybe you initiate some things, like some of those like 3-strike rules, or those things in place where you go, hey, if I have to talk to you multiple times, we're going to get to a space where this becomes a more formal process. And I really don't want to have to do that. So how can we work together to make sure when you're angry after a loss, you're not throwing other people's things, or you're not harming your players or harming equipment or harming the facility? So it's really about open discussions with what your team needs and what you need and what you're comfortable doing to create that safe atmosphere.
Perfect. And yeah, it might seem we're jumping between parents and coaches here, but I think it's just overall the process as a whole, and not just how it naturally, happens in terms of managing in that. And so going back to the parents side of it, you talk about advocating for their participants, for their player. How can parents or caregivers advocate appropriately for oneself, family, or athletes? So I know there's a lot of information that Hockey Alberta has provided to associations and people on the website and such. But can you briefly summarize some of those really good ways that they can appropriately advocate for athletes. Because I know we talked about this, again, being a supportive parent a few weeks ago on one of our podcasts. I think these are some of those takeaway pieces that we really want to highlight for people watching the program, and how can they improve the situation. So yeah, going back to it, how can parents and caregivers advocate appropriately for, their athlete, their family, or their oneself?
So a lot of it starts with knowing what we're advocating for. Understand what bullying, harassment, conflict is, so that when you see it, you can understand the right next steps. Is this just players being players and having some disagreements? Because that's going to require a little bit of a different advocacy space than if it's, okay, this is a bullying incident. This meets the definition that I understand, and I need to address it in this way. And so being aware of what that looks like is really helpful. Once you can be able to determine what type of issue is happening, then you just need to address it, advocate in really safe and respectful ways for everybody involved. So look for safe spaces and respectful spaces to talk. Don't just blurt out, start addressing conduct and conflict in the middle of locker rooms, crowded hallways, other like lobbies and other spaces where other people are around, where there's other factors of influence when we're in the heat of the moment. Look for a safe space to talk, right? If we can't find a safe space, that's what that 24-hour rule is for. Hey, do you think we could get together tomorrow morning? Do you think I could give you a call this afternoon when I've had a chance to wrap my head around what happened? So trying to find spaces where we can talk that is safe for everybody involved. Potentially you're looking at putting things in writing. So write an email if you're setting something to team personnel or to a coach or to your association. That's always a really great space. Give people the ability to have to look back at where the conversation started and where it needs to go, instead of trying to remember a phone call I had at 10 o'clock last night. Plan in advance how you want to communicate and what your expectations of that communication are. So coming with solutions focused outcomes rather than punitive, kick them out, fire everybody. This kid who's 9 can never play hockey again because they did a bullying behavior. Those aren't very helpful strategies and often cause people to put their backs up and become really closed off from finding helpful solutions. So what are some problem solutions focused outcomes, problem solving things that we can do that would help you and your athlete move forward from the situation? We'd really like an apology. We'd really just like I'd really like for my child to not have their equipment kicked around all the time. Could they sit in a different spot? Could they change at a different time? Is there a way we could have a little bit more supervision? Look for some solutions that would impact the outcome versus just, I don't know, I think you should suspend that kid for 3 days or for 3 games because, that'll help them learn not to do something. And I think sometimes we get too focused on that. So coming together where we're not pointing fingers, we're focusing on the action and behavior and the outcome that we want can be really helpful in advocating.
Right on, Carlia. And just a few more for you. Again, thank you for taking the time out of your day. You kind of just touched on it there, but I kind of want to go a little bit more in depth. I feel like in most cases when conflicts are brought up, they are resolved. But unfortunately, sometimes you do have some people that, I don't know, that just it never seems to be the case. So I'm just curious, if a player is getting bullied and nothing is changing in any way, what are some of the outcomes and options that you guys provide? You had mentioned suspensions. Is that something you guys do as well? As could a player get, put on a new team? Could that player just be taken off the team? I'm just curious on some of the options that you guys might have.
Yeah, I think it's hard to give specific options because each scenario is different.
Right.
Each behavior is different, and there could be a lot of other factors that are contributing to what an outcome might be. There could be some historical incidents of behavior or space that we might have to look at. And from our perspective, again, Hockey Alberta doesn't have authority in the same sense to remove players and to have those impacts. So we really try and work with the team and the association to figure out what is the best outcome that makes safety and ensures fair play and safe process for all teammates involved. And yes, that could look like removal from hockey participation, whether that's games, activities, maybe it's just team events or practices. But I'm a big advocate and proponent of looking for formative consequences to those behaviors. So what are some education and learning tools that we can create that help to change that behavior instead of just discipline somebody? Mm-hmm. So instead of removing you for some games, and maybe that needs to be an option for safety and for other things, but can we add on some education so that now we know how not to do that same behavior in the future, and we can start to build and create healthy and safe children, teens, and adults.
Perfect. And so one last one before we kind of go into a little bit more of what Hockey Alberta is doing to help move the game forward as a whole. But, you know, talking about when we talked about advocating a little bit earlier on. So from a coaching standpoint, if I'm a coach and I'm getting some of this, or even an administrator, because this is kind of where sometimes it can go wrong as in this process, is the emotion sides of it, be it the parent or caregiver or the coach / administrator receiving that those concerns. What are some things that you know, a coach or a administrator can do to, you know, ensure that the process goes smoothly and those emotions are kept in check when a parent is bringing concerns forth?
It really starts with recognizing our own emotions and reactions in those spaces. It's about managing your own emotions and managing the emotions of those around us, so that we can get to a space where those emotions are no longer in play, and we can maybe just get back into the facts of what happened. So sometimes that's focusing or trying to focus back on the behavior and the actions that have occurred. So let's remove our thoughts and feelings and our finger pointing. They said this, and moving it back into, okay, what's the behavior that happened, and what are the outcomes that you're expecting? Here's what we can do. So putting that focus a little bit more on what we're looking at, what we can actually do to impact, versus recognizing we know that it's caused some harm. There's been some impacts. We have some strong feelings. But it sounds like we're all trying to create safety so that this doesn't happen again. Here's how we could do that. So a great way that I like to often teach about this is conflict resolution, managing emotions and anger. So it's using something called stop, think, feel, and act. So you need to stop the conduct behavior at the time that we're having it. So in our conversation, so let's stop. Let's take a few breaths and recognize how we're maybe feeling within the conversation, within the space that we're in. Think about what we want next. Think about what I want to have happen. I need to recognize how I feel and try and manage those emotions. And am I angry or upset? And this goes both ways for both parents and then for associations and members who are maybe having to deal with conflict resolution or conduct management. And then we need to focus on actions that support the outcome that we're looking for. So not just responding to things that happen, but what are some active actions we can do to prevent future harm? So again, we call that stop, think, feel, and act. And that's a really great 4-step process that we can kind of work through to help maybe manage some of those emotions, feelings, and spaces when we're trying to deal with conduct behavior.
Perfect. And yeah, those are some of the things that we want to take away. Hopefully those that are watching this program, listening to it, again, you can come back and listen to this over and over again and get some great insight here from Carlia, who's an trained expert in this area. And again, that those positive things that Hockey Alberta are doing to help ensure that the game continues to be a safe environment for our participants. And so, kind of wrapping up your time here with us today, want to address kind of some of the positive things that Hockey Alberta is doing to create that awareness and, being ahead of the curve as opposed to being reactive. So, I highlighted that this is a topical time that I circled this one on the calendar as well to have you on because, we're approaching 11.4 day. So can you briefly explain what 11.4 day is and the goal of creating awareness on this day?
Yeah. So 11-4 day obviously coincides with November 4th. It's a day that Hockey Alberta wanted to create some awareness around in alignment to the newer Rule 11.4 within the Hockey Canada rule book that really focuses on ice discrimination. So this rule came out, and Hockey Alberta really wanted to use the rule and a day. So we call 11-4 Monday, November 4th as Maltreatment Awareness Day. And we really wanted to use that as a springboard for conversations, awareness, education, and resourcing around prevention, intervention, and awareness of maltreatment, on ice discrimination as 11-4 rule talks through, and really wanted to kind of highlight, give a focus to the work that we're doing, that hockey's doing to interrupt and disrupt some of that discrimination, maltreatment, and harm that's happening.
Perfect. And, one of the other initiatives, and again, you've done a lot of work behind the scenes, but this one's a more public facing one that was one of the first initiatives that came out during your time frame. And that is the Players Pledge. And this was unveiled at around the Hockey Alberta Provincial Championships. We talked about that at our provincial championships that were hosted here for our U15 programs, AA and AAA. So can you briefly touch a little bit on the Player Pledge as well as the goals of that program?
Yeah. So Player Pledge, like you shared, Jeremy, launched or piloted our launch at the end of last season during our provincials. We also used opportunities within our spring showcase to have the pledge be looked at. And so what the pledge is trying to do is trying to create positive environments for all of our participants by encouraging individuals, so specifically our teammates, our athletes, to acknowledge that there's things and steps that we can do to create inclusive and respectful hockey. And so the pledge is encouraging that participation. We're encouraging that recognition that there's things that we can do, and we're asking players to do some things in order to help create that change and move that change forward. So the pledge tells in a summarized theme that it starts with me, and we want actions to start with players and teams and contribute to that change. And we're looking to launch that more formally for all teams in various capacities for this season. So we're just wrapping up some of those final bits and pieces on the back end before we launch that out to across the province and look to get engagement at all levels of our sport.
Right on. One last time, Carlia Schwab, manager of EDI and Safe Sport Hockey Alberta, joining us. Carlia, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day. This is obviously a very important topic and something that needs to be addressed, and you were able to provide some very informative answers. So we really appreciate you taking the time out of your day. And we're on episode 9. I wouldn't be surprised if we have you on again. So thank you.
You bet. Thank you so much for having me. And I'd love to come back and chat about many other aspects of the work that I'm doing here.
For sure. Absolutely. Have a wonderful rest of your day, Carlia. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
You as well. Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween. Right on. There we go. Awesome. Well, that was just great. That really was. We were able to shed some light on a lot of topics there. The process, how to, first recognize the issue as a whole at the beginning there. And so, yeah, it was good. Carlia she was awesome.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it's just one of those resources that, again, Hockey Alberta is showing to be an innovator in the country here. in what it does and such. And you touched on, yes, we definitely will be bringing her back. We talked about half of her job description today. And in the new year, we will talk about the EDI half of her job description as well and such. So again, those are those assets that we have in this system to continue to make sure that our sport is safe, welcoming, and just continuing to evolve. And it's one of those things that this isn't a reactionary thing. Hockey Alberta has been a leader in safety in this country for a long time. And, I'm passionate about that because this was my realm for, like I said, 7 years of dealing with game and conduct, and then my entire time dealing with the safety side of it. And, we looked at our ways to start to bring in the ideas of the safe sport, making that space a more inclusive during that time. So again, this isn't just reactionary to things that have happened. Again, like I said, work has been done for a good part of 15 years at least in this realm, in making the game safe as a whole. Like I said, we had our game and conduct volunteers that would deal with each zone at the time. And then, during my time, one of the things was those standard expectations of what a minor hockey association or what Hockey Alberta expects its minor hockey associations to do when these things come to fruition, unfortunately. And then again, just now having that dedicated person with expertise that can provide those even more nuances that to help support our associations as a whole. So again, the organization's been a leader in us as well in Hockey Edmonton. One of the first things that Hockey Edmonton did when I did these standard expectations, they adopted them right away. Chris March, who runs the Edmonton Federation Hockey League, so those that participate around this area in the tiered hockey system, they'd be participating in that realm. But he was one of the people that implemented these expectations. And again, we talk about the processes and the number of processes that are in place, again, to make sure that your concerns are managed appropriately. Again, if they are serious, it is taken outside of the hockey sphere. So Hockey Canada, Hockey Alberta, Hockey Edmonton, White Mud West, Confederation, CAC, Maple Leaf Athletic, none of us deal with that. That is first and foremost handed off to the experts who are trained in the, specific, trauma. I think the term is trauma related, investigations and such, as well as the legal expertise. So again, paid experts to manage that. Then if it falls without, if they deem it's something that can be managed at the local levels and the provincial levels, again, like I said, we have those processes in place. Again, team level, association, in our case, Hockey Edmonton, and then Hockey Alberta. So again, there is a whole bunch of different processes here that are in place to ensure that your concerns, your concerns are managed appropriately. And so again, like I said, I think this is just the evolution of the sport and our system as a whole. The dedication that we have to making sure that your participants or your players, your children's experience in hockey is a positive experience.
For sure. Man, that's at the end of the day, that's what we strive for, right? So this is the Hockey Edmonton Show. I'm YouTube Trev. That's Jeremy as we dive into the final thoughts on today's episode 9. And I reckon there are a number of things in place to help prevent these issues, if you want to shed some light on that.
Yeah, definitely. And we talked about the end side of it. So when something does happen, that was the focus of this program here. But a lot of things are in place to make sure that those things don't occur to start with. So, the first thing from all of our organizations is, the 10-step screening process that is adopted by Volunteer Canada, Volunteer Alberta, any of our volunteer groups that have, deal with volunteers. So there is 10 steps involved in the screening process to make sure that we are preventing those that have ill intents from getting into the game as a whole. So again, those can go from, things like proper recruitment, proper selection, interview, criminal record checks. But then the other half is continue to monitor their performance, that person's performance, and seeking the feedback from the participants to see how their experience went with these coaches, for example. Then we talked about, in our coaching programs and earlier on in other episodes, we talked about the Respect in Sport Activity Leader program. So again, that is the standard, consistent message of what is expected in your role as a coach. So again, everybody understands what is expected. It highlights what appropriate, inappropriate behavior is in that realm. And again, some of this is also addressed in our coaching programs, like Stephen talked about last week, in that, we talk about interactions within our participants and how to appropriately manage some of those dynamics that might happen, in conversations with the facilitators during those coach clinics. So again, part of the training that you're provided as a Hockey Alberta coach essentially is again, Respect in Sport, as well as our coach programs. Those shape how to have those positive, appropriate interactions with our participants. And then again, like we said, the policies and the processes in place. So again, we have those policies in place. Hopefully, again, as we share these on these programs, these are the standard expectations are expected of our organizations. We want to have a positive environment. So again, things like appropriate behavior, policies on bullying, abuse, harassment, how to manage those concerns. Again, those are things our associations would be able to provide any parent that has a concern or caregiver that has a concern. And again, what can you expect in that process? So again, all of our organizations will have that outlined. And again, those processes in the management steps as well. So again, talk about some organizations institute a 24-hour rule. Some teams, it goes to the manager versus the coach. Again, each of those has different processes. And again, like we talked about in being a supportive parent and what you can expect episodes there, we talk about, being aware of what your organization's policies and processes is. And again, Carlia highlighted some of that, as there is some, expectation for, parents and caregivers to be aware of the processes and again, be a participant in those processes as a whole. One of the things that I liked about what Carlia brought today was that, there is some things that, yes, there are things that we expect our parents and caregivers to do in these processes. And likewise, again, having those realistic goals as a whole. Again, our goals are not to be, to like everybody. This is just like real life, like we highlighted earlier on. You might not like your coworkers, but at the end of the day, you have to respect them.
Yeah.
Similarly, you're in a team with 20 other players, 15 to 20 players. That could be anywhere from 15 to 30 different parents, actually probably in more cases, So again, don't have to like each other, but have to respect each other. And so that's kind of the highlight there is, again, we want to make sure here are the ways that we can encourage that positive and safe environment for our participants.
Right on. And time now for the call to action of the video. If someone were to have, some conflict, maybe you could point them in the direction where to go, Jeremy?
Yeah, for sure. So again, Hockey Alberta does have a lot of information to help you navigate these processes. And again, a lot of information. Carlia could be here speaking for another 2 hours on each of those points. So if you go onto the Hockey Alberta website under members and game and conduct management, there will be some pieces on how you manage conflict appropriately. Some of this was stuff that I had helped put onto that website during my time, so I'm aware of exactly kind of what there is there. And then again, hockeyalberta.ca members, maltreatment, bullying, and harassment. There's another section there dealing with these specific areas, and again, more in-depth information on how to manage and navigate those aspects there. And so again, like I said, if you do witness any of this, again, be proactive, and let's address it as soon as it happens. Because again, like Carlia said, and I've been in her shoes as well, we get at the end of the year all these concerns about something happened, and okay, well, for an organization to do a investigation, that time has already elapsed. To manage the behavior, because that's the end goal of discipline here is it's not punitive, it's to change behavior. That's our whole goal, especially when we're talking about children here and their learnings. So again, we want to try to change behavior. Well, we've lost that opportunity when it happens at the end of the year. And really that impact side of it. And if something is significant where we do have to administer discipline, again, we've lost some of that opportunity to administer some of that discipline. Yes, we can do, as Carlia alluded to, a lot of educational components, but if it's severe or if it's repeated, and when I say repeated, that we've disciplined this participant multiple times and that person's just not getting it, then you want to you start to ramp it up a little bit, which means that might be missing some time from participating in the sport. Well, again, all this comes at the end of the year. We've lost that opportunity.
Yeah.
Right. So again, being aware of the processes, understanding, again, like she said, what bullying, harassment, and maltreatment are, and then navigating and advocating on behalf of your participant, your child, appropriately. Those would be the first few things to do. And then again, from an association standpoint, ensuring that we are living up to our processes and those standard expectations that have been shared for years within Hockey Edmonton. So again, those would be some of the call to actions there. And again, I think one of the things that we can sit there and hopefully understand is, at the end of the day, I don't want to say check the ego per se, but check the ego and understand that we're here for the participant as a whole. So again, some of the things that Carlia shared when managing that conflict, really take that to heart and stop and think about it as well a little bit. And again, understand that we're here to ensure a smooth and cohesive dressing room as a whole. And it's not just one person versus 19. Like, everybody has to be cohesive in that room. So again, like Carlia brought today, I think some very good perspective and understanding that, yes, we are in a team environment. There is a goal that we want to make sure that it is a cohesive environment. It's not just one person getting their entire way. It's, again, focusing on the child, the experience of that child in that team environment.
Right on. Yes, great stuff from Carlia, as well as great stuff from this guy to my right, Jeremy Halischek. That'll pretty well do it for episode number 9 right here on the Hockey Edmonton Show on Edmonton Sports Talk. Thank you guys, as always. It was a little bit more of a important, serious episode that we had today, but it's good to discuss this. It is good to discuss this. It's very important that we address these issues, and it's a good conversation to be had. But that will pretty well wrap it up for today's episode. So as always, guys, drop a comment down below. We read every single one. And if you'd like us to discuss something in a future episode, drop a comment. We'll hear what you guys have to say, and that could be something we do down the road. Leave a like, as always, and thank you for tuning in on episode number 9 right here. Again, the Hockey Edmonton Show. Jeremy, happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween, Trev.
Yeah, thank you so much. That'll do it. Have a good one, guys. Take her easy, and see you next week.